Welcome into Texans on Tap. I'm Brandon Strange alongside Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Read their work on sportsmap.com. Follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975. Gents, the official game 3 of the preseason is in the books. Texans dominate the Giants 28-10. They are undefeated in games that are completed. This game was really about the defense, but if you're watching this or listening to this, you want to hear about that first quarter and CJ Stroud and the offense. So let's start there. The offense fails to score there in that first quarter, but show a really nice long drive on their first possession. What did you guys see from the O?
Played 4/5 of the starting offensive line on that drive, 11 plays, pretty easily going right down the field. And in the passing game, they moved with relative ease, and the ball was spread around. Brevin Jordan with a couple of catches, Nico Collins with one, and Stephon Diggs with one. Tank Dell was left out on that drive, but that's okay. Not everyone can see the ball on every possession. Bogged down in the red zone. Absolutely. It wasn't a bold decision, but 4th and 6. I know Fairbairn misses the occasional shorty, but you don't need to practice 24-yard field goals. So go for it on 4th and 6. And if the pass didn't work out, no problem. The running game remains, of course, still Joe Mixon-less. But as we talked about a week ago, Dameon Pierce is playing for his spot on this roster. And if you're just desperate to grasp for a silver lining, if you're a card-carrying member of the Dameon Pierce fan club, well, last week he rushed 4 times for 4 yards. Against the Giants, he rushed 4 times for 5 yards. Is that progress?
Yeah, I'll pick up right there, Charlie. This is a problem. I mean, and if it was just the preseason, we could chalk it up to that. But we know he struggled last year. So this isn't just a preseason thing. It doesn't look any better. Pretty much every other running back on the roster looks better than him. And I get it that the Giants starters have a good D-line. And, Pierce was, doing the starters reps. But at this point, it doesn't matter to me. I'm seeing Cam Akers get extra yards on the field that aren't drawn up. It's just him making people miss and making plays and watching him get to the edge and completely shift the field. He looks like a playmaker out there. Dameon Pierce just doesn't look like he has it. I'm ready to try somebody else. I'm a fan of his, but it's just not working. At what point are we going to get to with this? Are you going to let go of Akers or something like that? And then as the season goes along, Pierce still isn't getting it done, and somebody else picked up Akers and you missed out on it. So that's one of my big concerns. And not just Pierce necessarily him, even though that's part of it, just the running game in general with, early on in this game, what we saw last year, you wonder, are they going to struggle to run the ball again? I know we don't see Joe Mixon yet, or we haven't seen him. Hopefully that'll make a difference, but they got to have something on the ground to keep defenses honest and not make CJ drop back every time. Let me just add on to kind of what we talked about last week from PFF, how they used the receivers, what formations, who was on the field. Texans played 9 snaps and 11 personnel, and it was Dell and Collins played 4 snaps each from the slot. Diggs played 1. So this is a little different from last week where Diggs was more in the slot. This week we saw Dell and Nico in the slot, so they're changing that around a little bit. Nico played 15 to 17 snaps with the starters, so that was 88%. So I think Nico is going to be a really huge part of this. No surprise there that he's the guy that got paid. But Tank Dell, he only ran a route on 8 of 13 pass plays, and that includes plays that were called back by penalty. So it looks like Tank Dell is going to be the guy that, maybe he's on the sidelines a little more than Diggs and Nico, which we kind of expected. I think Noah Brown's the other X factor, and John Metchie, of course, showing up and making some plays this week. We haven't seen Noah Brown. How is he going to factor into this mix when he returns?
Yeah, a lot of this will evolve into the regular season, right? The most used offensive set now, really in the NFL, is 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end. Tank Dell is certainly part of the A team in that case. But if you're in your typical pro-style offense, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, right? The Texans, it's not like they use a fullback the majority of the time, but they had Andrew Beck on the field roughly 20% of the snaps last season, and that was among the highest fullback usages in the NFL. When the Texans are in 2-2, Collins and Diggs are going to be those guys, generally speaking, not Tank Dell. But they have the luxury, and we'll see about Slowick's creativity. They can go 3 wides with no tight ends. It's not like Dalton Schultz is a road grading blocking tight end. It's certainly a better blocker than any of your wide receivers. But they have some fungibility and flexibility. Speaking a little further to the roster spots, I believe Pierce is in trouble. It's still preseason, and it's the very early returns on the novel new kickoff returns. But it seems to me it's going to be very difficult to break big returns. That it's a short field, and they're de-emphasizing high-speed collisions with everyone packed in the receiving end of the field. And look, we all have better things to do than scour video of all NFL preseason games. We have a little bit of a life. But I'm not aware of around the league being much burst early on, and I don't know how much you can develop that. But if the kickoff return element is not a boost to Dameon Pierce's chances of making the roster as a running back, if he doesn't contribute on the coverage teams, a guy like Ogunbowale, I think Akers to this point is fairly safe because he shows that quick, a little bit of the Singletary, and obviously you have Joe Mixon. A fun preseason story, good for him. I don't think that off a 2-touchdown game that British is going to make the Texans, but maybe it enhances his chances of getting picked up off the waiver wire and sticking in the league once the Texans go from 90 to 53, because there's just no way they're going to carry more than 3 running backs, I don't believe anyway, plus the fullback. The other cluster position we've hit on previously is wide receiver. It was a big game 3 for John Metchie. Back-to-back plays, including the touchdown catch, really a bigger play immediately before that, but announcing his presence significantly with a 6-catch game, and in the jockeying for what I think are 3 wide receiver spots maybe after Collins, Diggs, and Dell. Major step forward for Metchie today. Robert Woods was catchless in the game. You never want to make too much of the stats, but you just look about the body of work and salary structure. I would think it's Metchie advantage over Woods, because now with Diggs here, the veteran leadership element of Robert Woods, it's minimized in its importance because Nico Collins is a year older, right? CJ Stroud is the heart and soul now of this offense, and already they're 22 years old. He's the leader of the offense. So, that to keep Woods around just because he's that veteran guy, I don't see it if you think you have better football players and can also tuck away millions of dollars in salary cap savings, if not for this season, moving to 2025. Offensive line, I have a couple of reserve spots to figure out. I don't think it was an homage to Laramie Tunsil, but the Texans' first snap of the game, Blake Fisher, left tackle. Let's go with the false start. The rookie needs to run a lap, I guess, for that. Shaq Mason had a holding call in the game. It wasn't an offensive clinic, but there was certainly nothing about the first team that makes you go, uh-oh, other than the general blondness of the running game, but with no Tunsil, with no Mixon. But it's possible. It's certainly not the ideal, but there have been teams that the best running game is the passing game. And with a mobile quarterback, I remember early last season when Stroud's dropping back 50 times and we're thinking this is just not going to be sustainable all season long. With an immobile pocket passer type, a Matt Schaub, who I saw peeked into the telecast today. Maybe that was Daniel Jones's homage to late Texans Matt Schaub. If you're a Giants fan watching that game, what's the puke factor with those interceptions that he threw? Anyway, I'm rambling. But I don't see anything that jumps out as a real alarm bell ringer for the Texans offensively. As long as they're healthy, if they can't run the ball better than this with Joe Mixon, then there's reason to be concerned. But at least they do have a passing game that with even decent protection should be pretty elite.
Yeah, and the protection was good today, but I do want to talk about Dameon Pierce just a little bit because we have hit on it. Last season, we saw Devin Singletary leapfrog Pierce in the depth chart at running back. At this point, what is the case for you to keep Pierce on that roster spot over Akers?
I don't see a strong one because it's not as if he's established as a real good pass catcher, third down back. We haven't seen Dameon Pierce or the Texans flourish in the screen game, even in his rookie season. It's not something where he was featured. In Texans history, maybe Dameon Pierce is a modern day Steve Slayton, who was a third-round pick out of West Virginia, had 1,000-yard season and actually caught a pretty good number of passes. And whoa, here's the guy. And it was over for him in a hurry. And maybe that, unfortunately for Dameon Pierce, will be his Texans epitaph. I would expect him to resurface somewhere else in the league, but the clock may be well ticking on his time as a Texan.
I mean, it has to be. Just, it's the eye test, right? I mean, you watch, he can't make anybody miss. He just, there's no elusiveness to his game that I'm seeing at this point. And I think they said during the broadcast, the Texans haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2019 when it was Carlos Hyde.
Yeah.
That's crazy to even think about. So I think they got to make a move with Dameon Pierce, because not only do you see Cam Akers making guys miss, looking more athletic out there, then you look at the other team and you see the guy that took his job last year in Devin Singletary, and you see him scoring touchdowns and making some moves. So it's just so obvious on the field that he just looks more sluggish than the other guys. It doesn't seem like there's any zuzu to his game, and he's not as big as he used to be. So it's not like he can just run guys over and that'll get the job done. So I think the Texans are in a predicament here, and as of right now, I don't think Pierce is going to make the team, which is crazy. He started the game today.
That would be my guess also. Maybe Nick Caserio trades him for a late round draft pick, conditional draft pick, with basically nothing. But something is better than basically nothing. But with the Texans, right, in 2019, the last 1,000-yard back, well, 2020, 21, 22, they were a humiliation to the city. And then 2023, obviously, Pierce just lost his job. Some guys, high water raises all boats. It's not always true, right? The Texans have gotten a whole lot better over the last season and into this one. And maybe Dameon Pierce isn't good enough to cut it with this level of the Houston Texans.
So Charlie, you said this game wasn't an offensive clinic, but it certainly was on defense. Texans forced that 3-and-out early on that first possession. Stroud and the offense marched down the field, turn over the ball on downs at the goal line, but then Petrie picks up that pick six. And then, Derek Stingley gets a goal line pick of his own on the other end of the field. The D gives up 10 in the first half and then hold New York to a goose egg in the second half. Defense is where we've had a lot of, I'd say, the most amount of questions on depth of this roster. What are your thoughts, 3 games into the preseason, on what you're seeing out of the defense?
I mean, you'd always rather look good than not, but the second half we can toss out. The field was populated mostly by guys who aren't going to make either team. But that the first team defense looked a lot better than the Giants' first team offense. Well, most teams are going to look better than the Giants' first team offense. At least Daniel Jones is the quarterback, but with no Will Anderson, no Daniil Hunter, and you still had playmaking ability. Will Edwards and Fatukasi hold down the interior of the defensive line in Danico Autry's absence. Petrie's pick six was basically a gift. That was just an idiotic throw. If that's a young guy trying to make the team or a guy on the bubble, that's the kind of throw that gets a guy cut. But Daniel Jones is a $40 million per season quarterback for the Giants presently. Stingley, that was an all-pro corner play. That was just a deep ball. He's in stride and has wide receiver hands to go with all his deep back skills. Right to this point, the Jets got the better cornerback, drafting Sauce Gardner immediately after the Texans took Derek Stingley Jr. But that's because Derek Stingley Jr. has missed a whole bunch of games. I don't see, and I'm not knocking Sauce Gardner at all. He's a first-team All-Pro his first 2 seasons in the league. I think Stingley is that caliber of cover corner if he can give them 15, 16, if not all 17 games. You can just see he has the quick twitch, athletic skills, along with just the size and speed and quickness and throwing hands of great cover cornerbacks.
Yeah, what was it, the first or second play of the game? Stingley could have had another interception that he could have ran back to the house. So he could have had 2 in that game. Let me give some love to Derek Barnett. He's the one that got that pressure on Daniel Jones that led to that interception there. Nice job from him. Alshire, I noticed he whiffed a tackle on Singletary kind of early in the game. Just something I noticed. And in my mind, I'm like, why can't Pierce make a linebacker miss like that? Like, come on, man. But so I noticed that from him. Lassiter, we got to see him in action. Not really much going on. Nobody's really throwing at him, but it's nice to know that he was healthy enough to play. Petrie, got to see him in the slot a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how they use everybody there. Still Christian Harris not playing yet. It'll be nice when they get him back. He's such an athletic, good player. And Charlie hit it on it. We didn't see the two best pass rushers in this game. So overall, yeah, I thought the defense did very well. I like what I'm seeing from these guys. These guys make plays, and the secondary, it's kind of been a weakness for this team over the years, but I think it could be a strength this year.
And I'm not putting forth a weekend homework assignment. It's just a think aloud item. Look at this roster and look where the Texans are poised with at least the real potential to go. How many guys who will be backups on this team, maybe even one or two guys who will not make this team, who would have been starters on the Texans in 2020, 2021, or 2022?
We're seeing a battle at quarterback between Case Keenum and Tim Boyle. We didn't see Davis Mills. We haven't seen him in practice. The media asked D'Amico about it. He said Mills is fine. Let me put my tinfoil hat on here for a little bit. Do you think this is a health issue that they're not disclosing here, or do you think it's possible maybe they're shopping Davis Mills around in a trade?
The Texans channeling the Houston Astros on injury verification. I don't think there's any reason to believe there's an injury unless something occurred during the week that we haven't heard of. I think Mills is their solid number two. Frankly, if I were the Texans, I'd be looking to sign him to an economical extension. Case Keenum is 36 years old. I don't think Tim Boyle's thought of as an NFL caliber quarterback. I'd go so far as, if they're really struggling, if they want to bide their time on a final Pierce decision, if they're just not quite comfortable going with Cam Akers and Ogunbowale going into the season and want to carry a fourth running back, or, one more backup offensive lineman or defensive back, do they really need three quarterbacks on their roster? Right? Case Keenum got guaranteed money. His base salary for this season, I believe, is $2.75 million. It wouldn't be cutting him for cap reasons. But at 36 years old, now back in not his original hometown, but his adopted hometown, I mean, is Case Keenum going to get claimed? Is he going to go sign with another team? Would you be really worried about that if it's the case, losing your third string quarterback, as long as you are set with Mills as your number two? Do they even need three on their active roster? If they were to cut both of them, are both guys going to surface in the league that, heaven forbid, someone went down and you needed to get another quarterback, that either Keenum or Boyle would not be available? So yeah, I would call it a battle of little importance if it is a battle.
Yeah, I saw a report earlier this week that Mills sustained a rib injury in the Steelers game. So I saw a report that that's why he didn't play this week. So I think that's what that was. And I was shocked to hear this was a competition for the third quarterback. To me, I think it's Keenum. It's kind of a no-brainer. So at least that would be my expectation. I didn't see anything from Boyle today to go, oh, wow, we can't let that guy go. So
yeah, that might just be some corners of the media filler time killer claim that it's a battle for the third spot.
Fair.
Well, they kept calling Boyle a gunslinger. So they were really pushing that narrative on the broadcast. So I kept waiting to see the gunsling, and it just looked like regular quarterback play to me. There wasn't anything where you saw any, but I mean, it's Tim Boyle. I mean, what are you really expecting out of a quarterback battle for the third spot on a roster? I'll give you guys the final word on this show.
Water gunslinger, maybe. Hey, it's 3-1 to go. That's the best part about it. I would presume that it's cameo appearances, although with 2 weeks between the Rams game, the preseason finale, and September 8th at the Colts to go live. Does D'Amico want to give the starters the better part of a full half? I would always lean toward holding out key guys entirely. But the countdown is on. Just one more of these fake games and we can start. And you guys are a few years younger than me. You guys know the NFL used to play 6 preseason games and 14 regular season games. Right? For how many years were we? There's 4 preseason games with 16 regular season games. So they finally went to 17-3. Now Roger Goodell, with the fans' best interest in mind, of course, to go to 18-2. It used to be 14-6. It'd be like playing 70 spring training baseball games.
That's absurd. Uh, I don't know if I really want to see much in that game against the Rams. And part of that reason is Sean McVay is kind of famous for not playing his starters in the preseason. So it's not as if you're going to miss out on some great work against the Rams starters next week if all the Texans number ones don't go, because the Rams number ones aren't going to be playing. Yeah, I'd rather be just kind of cautious with it. We got a full quarter out of Stroud today. I mean, would they really go all the way to halftime next week? Maybe, but I don't really feel like it's necessary. But for the people that really need to make the roster, like Dameon Pierce better be out there. He better make some plays. John Metchie needs to build upon what he did this week as well. And like I said, Noah Brown, is he ever coming back? Robert Woods, he could get cut off this roster. He needs to do some things. Hutchinson's been really big so far this preseason, not so much today. So it's kind of like we talked about earlier. There's a lot of talent on this team that's not going to make the overall roster, which it's a good problem to have. We haven't seen that around here in a long time.
That's going to be it for this episode of Texans on Tap. Just a reminder, we'll be reacting to every game this season live following the conclusion of each game. We hope you join us next week for Rams Texans. You don't have to wait that long, though, to get your Houston sports fix. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and our sister channel, Sports Map Houston. The three of us will have a brand new episode of our Houston Astros podcast called Stone Cold Stros. We hope to see you there. And until next time, go Texans.